Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the Gateway School Board of Directors study session meeting. Today is Tuesday, June 9th, 2020. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a roll call, Bonnie?
Mr. Caleri.
Here.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Here.
Mrs. Delaney. Here. Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Gottman.
Here.
Mr. McIntyre.
Here.
Mr. Ritter.
Here.
Mrs. Warning. Mrs. Warning.
Mrs.
Here.
Warning.
I can't.
I don't think your mic's working, Bonnie.
I can't hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. All right, I would like to report that the board came out of executive session at 7 p.m., which began at approximately 6:15 to discuss personnel and contract negotiations. Before we move into the comments from residents on agenda items, I just asked for Dr. Short to give us a little update on the language, facts, and lab cuts that were proposed, mainly because I think a lot of the comments are addressing those, so I think it will be imperative for him to give an update on that before we move into that section on the agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Cerrucci, and first off, thank you everyone for showing up tonight, and also to our audience who may be on YouTube at this point listening in. Needless to say that this 2020-21 budget has been challenging, to say the least, as we have met probably 4 different times over the last 3 to 4 months publicly to review the budget and to provide updates to everyone. The number one factor, concern of the Gateway School District has been the projected revenue. Also, while putting together a budget, it was essential that we maintain as best we can the programming that has been a hallmark and staple of the district for years. There is no doubt in my mind when you compare our program of studies to other districts, it is very robust, and we are proud of that. There's been a lot of rumors, speculation outside about potential cuts to programming and the effects on our children, on our learners. First and foremost, with the science cut proposed elimination of 0.5 position. There was a rumor floating around that all essentially 2-period labs would be cut from the program of study. That is in fact false. We have 2 courses that we have identified out of a course list of nearly 20 offerings that would be placed back to a 5-period schedule with the labs embedded. So essentially this maintains the chemistry, the physics, the anatomy, physiology, extra 2-period labs that we have all been accustomed to and is traditional and is important and vital to our learners. The Family Consumer Science Department 7 years ago had a graduation requirement of life rules mandated for all students at the high school at one point throughout their 4-year career to be taken. By simply eliminating that requirement, not the course, while still maintaining the 25 credits, we would be able to offer all programming for family consumer science, including the preschool program. Understanding that we have not been given clearance from the Department of Education or the Governor's office to see how that would work in the fall with our young students alongside our adult, soon-to-be adult learners. But it has always been the intent to offer that course as we've always done in the past at Gateway. As far as the languages, we have met internally, myself and the board, along with our administration team, to creatively develop a schedule that will in fact preserve the German and the Latin courses through creative scheduling with a physical person in place. Brian was with us. I don't know if you want to add a few words as we described how that would work.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Short. We did meet earlier today in regards to the foreign languages. And yeah, the emails that we've gotten from the community show strong support for languages, and we hear you. And as you said, through the creative scheduling, we are able to keep every course available. This would also allow the college credits that you can obtain once you go to levels 4 and 5, so all students will be able to keep those. And the in-person teaching. We also have other creative ways to instruct all the students so that they are learning everything they need to. Even if you have to merge classes together, we have found ways to make sure everyone's still getting the high standard of education that we provide to all of our students.
So understanding that once the dust settles on this year with the budget, we do foresee that all of those would be maintained with creative scheduling, also ensuring that there is that physical presence in that classroom with a certified teacher. At this point, I do have Dr. Chakey, who is with us to provide us with an update on the equity work over the last 3 months, since essentially we were shut down by the governor's office on March 13th. Dr. Chakey.
Good evening, everyone. We felt that it was necessary to definitely talk about some of the work that we've been doing within our district in regard to equity, given some of the circumstances that are occurring throughout our nation. And at this point in time, we wanted to share with everyone the Gateway School District statement on equity. The Gateway School District is committed to nurturing schools where each and every child is respected and valued as an individual, regardless of skin color, gender, orientation, religion, ability, or any other category. As one of the more diverse school districts throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we stand together as one in full support of our students and against acts of prejudice and racism, and will continue to relentlessly seek systemic, permanent change. Gateway School District will continue to position ourselves as listeners. However, to be clear, as a district, we will never remain silent in the presence of any injustices that affect our school community. We will continue to work to ensure educational equity for all stakeholders and stand in solidarity with our Gateway students and families. Now, this actually goes beyond just a statement, because we take a lot of pride in the work that we've been doing with our equity work with students, families. A lot of our staff members have done a tremendous job. We're at the point right now where on March 13th, when the shutdown actually happened, our Gateway School District Equity Committee didn't stop. We had some Zoom meetings. We continued writing the GSD equity policy. We're at the point now where we have a draft policy that's ready to go to get more feedback from stakeholders. It was excellent at the community event that we previously had. We had about 30 or 40 GSD equity policy feedback forms that we collected. So we got a lot of information from families. And we took that feedback in crafting an equity policy. If our goal happens, we would like to see us start the next school year with this policy in place. So over the course of the next couple months, we'll be talking with some stakeholders and getting more input as far as the equity policy goes. Then we would like to present it to board members and also get some board member feedback around the equity policy so that we can make this happen. The other aspect of this too is the schools with the school equity teams have done tremendous jobs. Not only the professional development, but a lot of them have had the courage to write some letters. We have the Evergreen team here today, and they crafted a tremendous letter to families. They've been invited today so that possibly they could read their letter so that the community can see that. So we'll allow some time here soon for them to read theirs. But I also wanted to touch on the district equity statement. Will be posted to our website tomorrow. It'll also be sent out to families so that everyone has a good understanding of how great the Gateway School District is in our stance in regard to equity and the safety and security of our students.
At this time, I would like to move on to the agenda item. It's a little delay on the microphone, sorry. At this time, I would like to move to comments from residents on agenda items. And we do have some people that called in advance to speak, so I will give you first opportunity. There is a microphone there. Damian Reed, you are up if you are here and you still wish to speak. Is Damian here? Okay, next on the list is Mark Spallone. When you get to the podium, if you could just state your address for the record.
My name is Mark Spallone. I live at 707 Dewberry in Monroeville. First, I want to thank you for taking into consideration the keeping of the languages, the German and the Latin. That was the main reason that we wanted to talk. Speaking of Latin, it's just an incredible program. I can speak to the convention that the Latin community goes to. There's over 500 students that attend it from Pennsylvania all across. We're among some really elite schools that attend this convention, Perry Ellis, North Allegheny. So I just thought that to drop the Latin program would be disheartening to the students. We offer such a great program. So thank you for creatively scheduling it. So I appreciate that. So I'll be curious to see what that looks like. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Holly, did you want to add anything? Holly Spallone?
Yeah, just to reiterate that, thank you for considering the creative scheduling. The languages at Gateway are phenomenal. The things that the kids learn, it is above and beyond what they get at other districts. So it is very appreciated that you were able to make that happen. Thank you.
Tell them e pluribus unum. Put him on the spot, Mr. Clary.
I couldn't help it.
He's actually wearing a shirt from one of the Latin. He didn't want to wear his tunic.
Oh, very cool.
All right.
Oh,
That's
thank
good.
you. Very nice.
Thank you.
It's good advice.
She's anxiously waiting. She starts high school next year, so she's anxiously waiting to continue.
All right.
All right, next up, we have Casey Mazovsky. Did I say that correctly?
My name is Casey Masovsky. I live at 231 Brenton Street, Monroeville, PA. I also came on behalf of the Latin program. I know Gavin and I were once peers. Mr. Spallone was also one of the chaperones on the club trip that went to Penn State for the Latin convention. I came to speak on behalf of it. I came 2 years ago, right before I graduated. Latin program really does wonders for all the students who take it. It's not just about the language, it's about the culture and all the cultures that were once built upon the founding of the language. And I really think that part of what makes Gateway great is the language department here, because it offers students so many other academic opportunities they never would have had otherwise. And I thank you for doing your best to work with this creative scheduling to keep the Latin program and keep the German program, because I know Latin only has one teacher in the district, and as far as I'm aware, German does too. And I know a lot of students who were touched by those individuals. I still keep in contact with Mr. Guilfoyle, and just thank you very much for that. And I just hope that we can continue to work those language programs into future curriculums, because those are important to a lot of students, and more so than they realize. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dylan Baxter.
Hi, my name is Dylan Baxter, and I live at 424 Veen Street in Pitcairn, and I am here too on behalf of the language department, proposed cuts. And it is very nice to hear, before having to say anything, that the creative scheduling is in place to try and save the departments, because how important they are, that I don't know if everybody's aware too, that all three, Spanish, French, and German, provide their students with certificates when you graduate, have exams that you can use and show, oh, this is your proficiency in a language that I have personally used in college to be able to move up to the next level in certain classes and get a job as a tutor because of my ability in Spanish that I learned here. And that Gateway, the language department, spends a large part of its budget making sure that we have the ability to get these students the certificates to prove their proficiency in this language, and that the National Latin exam, giving the Latin students away, because Latin isn't necessarily a spoken language, so you can't judge them on that criteria, that they get a way to shine and show their abilities. My only concern, and that I hope with the creative scheduling, is that there wouldn't be too many students in an individual classroom, because one of the most important things about a language is that more one-on-one contact with the teacher, because especially with these four languages, there are so many nuances that you won't get by Googling something that we hear all the time. Google Translate is not right. That's not how you learn a language. And it shows time and time again that our specific teachers that we have are why the program is what it is, not just because we have those languages, and hope that all the teachers that are part of this program could stick around with it with these creative scheduling changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on agenda items related to the previous discussion that hasn't signed up? I just want to give an opportunity. Okay, if not, I'm going to move to the Evergreen Equity Team and invite you to share your comments. Oh, we can wait.
So if he, he would have read it if it were to be read, but he also is aware that the district has one, so he makes me easier.
Sure. Yep, no problem. Okay. Let's move on to Section B, Bills and Financial Reports. Mr. Schott.
This is on. Can you hear me? There we go. Thank you, Mrs. Cerucci. Section B, Financial Reports. We have this evening to present Section B1, List of Bills for the month of June 2020, Section B2, Monthly Financial Statements for the month of May 2020, and Section B3, Budget Transfers for the month of June 2020.
Is there any discussion, any questions for Mr. Schott from board members? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to Section C. We don't have any items previously tabled. Section D is Personnel Agenda. Is Mrs. Crump with us?
Yes, I am, Ms. Cerucci.
Oh, I can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Good. Thank you so much. Presented to me this evening for approval are 8 items on the personnel agenda for the June 30th, 2020 meeting. Under resignations, we have 3 listings. We have 3 leave of absences. We also have 3 transfers from the collective bargaining agreement. We have 2 early literacy program companies. For supplemental contracts, we have 36 fall athletic contracts to be presented, 1 volunteer, and we also have the proposal for the curtailment or alteration of educational programs, 7, and number 8, it's the elimination of support positions, which we have captured through attrition.
Thank you, Mrs. Crump. Is there any questions for Mrs. Crump from board members?
I have a question.
Mrs. Warning?
I see on here the staff nurse. Now, I know we emailed back and forth. Every school will have a staff nurse on hand?
That is correct. We currently have 7 staff nurses, so that will stay consistent. It's just our floating that we did not refill.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board members have questions for Mrs. Crump on Section D? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to Section E, Conferences and Conventions. We have none. And Section F would be Administrative Report. We do have some action items tonight. Dr. Short.
We could have Dr. Chapin, you want to lead us off?
Okay, item number 1, we have Forbes Road Career and Technology Center, revenue anticipation note for the 2020-21 fiscal year. Item number 2.
Thank you. Item number 2 is the approval of purchases and payments for various department items during the current 1920 fiscal year, specifically for the elementary department purchases through Welch Allen Vision Screener Package for UP in the amount as indicated. We also have some secondary department purchases, Vista Higher Learning, 27 level 1, 2, and 3 VTECs and licenses for Gateway High School in the amount as indicated. And for the special education department through Sbss, 550 Success Maker reading software licenses, 3 on-site days of professional development. Total of all those purchases, $46,090.65. Please note the above items will be purchased and paid for during the 1920 fiscal year instead of during the 2021 fiscal year to reduce expenditures in the 2021 fiscal year general fund budget. Additional purchases may be presented for board consideration and approval at the June regular board meeting. Item number 3, approve the renewals and premium payments for the following applicable district insurance coverage policies for the 2021 fiscal year as indicated below. Please note the above insurance policies are being renewed through the CM Region Insurance Company, with the exception of the workers' compensation insurance through Encova Insurance Company and the Violent and Malicious Acts insurance through Lloyd's of London. The above approvals are being done now in order to be able to finalize and bind the various insurance coverages prior to July 1st, 2020. And finally, item number 4, approve the advertisement for new food service department equipment to be purchased for utilization at the high school and at the Dr. Cleveland Stewart Junior Elementary School for the 2021 fiscal year. Please note the above food service department equipment purchases are included in the cafeteria fund budget for the 2021 fiscal year, which we will see that in the next section.
McIntyre, is there a second? Second by Mr. Caleri or Mr. Gottman. Discussion? Questions? Seeing none, roll call, Bonnie.
G.
Aye.
Mrs. Delaney? Mr. Gallagher? Mr. Gottman?
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre?
Aye.
Mr. Ritter?
Aye.
Mrs. Warning?
Okay,
Mr.
motion
Caleri.
carries. Sorry. Sorry, Paul. Motion carries. All right, let's move on to Section F, items for discussion only. Who wants to take this, Dr. Short?
Dr. Rossi?
Dr. Short, item number 1. EdTech team agreement, accept the agreement with EdTech team to provide technology professional development services for the 2021 school year. Item number 2, approve the iReady assessment pilot for K-12, used for both reading and math. Item number 3 is approve the purchase of the My Perspectives ELA textbooks. Item number 4, 30-day public display for the following policies. Policy 006, attendance at meetings. Policy 217, graduation requirements. Policy 335, family and medical leaves. And Policy 626, federal fiscal compliance.
Item number 5, Community College of Allegheny County dual enrollment agreement. Item number 6, student teachers for the fall, 2 as listed.
Item number 7, special education and a healthcare nursing service agreement as depicted in Exhibits B, C, and D.
In the price of all elementary and secondary student school breakfasts by 5 cents for the 2021 fiscal year to ensure the district's compliance with Section 205 of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, as indicated below. The paid lunch equity calculation for the 2021 fiscal year did not require any adjustment to the student lunch prices. Thus, the student lunch prices will remain the same as indicated for the 4 elementary schools as well as the middle schools and the high school for the 2021 fiscal year. Item number 9 is seeking approval to approve and adopt the final cafeteria fund budget for the 2021 fiscal year in the amount of $2,053,000, reflecting an increase in expenditures of $93,000 or 4.74% more than the cafeteria fund budget for the 1920 fiscal year. Note the district has budgeted for the utilization of $224,000 of retained earnings, which is the cafeteria fund equivalent of fund balance, to balance the 2021 fiscal year cafeteria fund budget. The district will not be required to utilize any general fund contributions in order to balance the 2021 fiscal year cafeteria fund budget. Item number 10, approve and adopt the final general fund budget for the 2021 fiscal year in the current amount of $75,376,000, reflecting a decrease in expenditures of $1,893,000, or 2.45% less than the general fund budget for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. The final general fund budget currently does not include an increase in the district's real estate tax millage rate. Thus, the real estate tax millage rate may or may not remain at the current 19.8675 mils for the 2021 fiscal year. The 19.8675 mils is the equivalent of $1.98675 on each $100 of assessed valuation of taxable real estate property in the district. Note, currently, the district may be required to utilize unassigned fund balance in the amount of $1,294,000 to balance the general fund budget for the 2021 fiscal year. The above budget amounts will change and have already changed prior to final adoption by the board at the June 30th, 2020 regular board meeting. Item number 11 is the approval of the homestead and farmstead exclusion real estate tax assessment reduction for 2020. And I will not read this entire resolution other than getting to the most important part, which is that every eligible homestead located in the municipality of Monroeville and Pitcairn, which total 7,986 properties, will each see a reduction of $183.10, or the equivalent of $9,216.06 in assessed value on their real estate tax bills. Item number 12, approve the payment of all applicable district bills by the business manager for the month of July 2020 in accordance with board policy number 616 via section B1 list of bills for the month of July 2020. Again, currently there is no July meeting scheduled. Please note that the list of bills will be compiled and emailed to the board for review on July 23rd. The board will have until the close of business on July 29th to review the list of bills and to ask any questions regarding the payments. The vendor check payments will then be mailed to the vendors on July 30th. Item number 13, approve the preliminary allocation amounts of federal title funds for the 2021 fiscal year for the following programs and the amounts as indicated below. Item number 14, approve the renewal of waterfront learning program and the pricing addendum rates between the Allegheny Intermediate Unit Number 3 and the district to provide a cyber school student learning format during the 2021 fiscal year, and that is as depicted in Exhibit E. Item number 15, approve the renewal and administrative fee payment in the amount of $19,645.78 for the current Better Unemployment Compensation Comprehensive Program offered directly by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association for stop-loss insurance protection if annual unemployment insurance claims reach the maximum claim stop-loss point of $130,971.90 during the 2021 fiscal year, and that is depicted in Exhibit F. Item number 16, approve the 60-month lease agreement for the continued lease of the district's postage mailing machine through Quadrant Leasing USA, Inc. for a monthly payment amount of $319.50 as currently depicted in Exhibit G. Please note the district's current monthly lease payment amount for a postage mailing machine lease is $308.49. Thus, the new postage mailing machine lease will cost an additional $11.01 per month. This postage mailing machine is located at district central administrative offices. Item number 7, approve the athletic trainer services sports medicine agreement for athletic trainer services with Allegheny Clinic, also known as Allegheny Health Network, for a term of 5 years, effective from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2025, as depicted in Exhibit H. Note the fee amounts for 3 athletic trainers to be provided by the Allegheny Clinic as part of the athletic trainer services to the district over the 5-year period of the agreement will be as follows, as indicated over the next 5 years. The district previously utilized the athletic trainer services at East Suburban Sports Medicine Center, who provide one athletic trainer to the district. Please see Exhibit H for a recap of the request for proposals received by the district for the athletic trainer services. Item number 18, approve the Head Start program located at Evergreen Elementary School and the Pre-K Counts program located at the Mosside Middle School, sponsor-to-sponsor agreement with the Allegheny Intermediate Unit Number 3 for the district's food service department to provide breakfast and lunch service to applicable students participating in the two programs during the 2021 fiscal year, and that is depicted in Exhibit I. Item number 19, approve the agreement for the district's continued participation in the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services administered school-based access program in accordance with the terms and applicable fees for the 2021 fiscal year. And we would have an exhibit there, but unfortunately I just received it at 5:15 today, so we will update this and have the exhibit on the agenda for the June 30th, 2020 regular board meeting. Item number 20, approve the district's receipt of $590,703 purchases and payments for the following items from the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, ESSER Fund, also known as the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act, federal funds during either the 1920 and or the 2021 fiscal year. Those are listed below, primarily technology department purchases, specifically news law, 9 ELA and social studies licenses for use at Gateway High School, Gateway Middle School, and Mosside Middle School. Ed Tech team, 16 professional development workshops at all buildings. Apple Inc., 1,340 Apple iPads for elementary and Mosside Middle School, and 4 professional development days for elementary and Mosside Middle School. Agile Repair, 1,340 Apple iPad cases with protection plans for the elementary and Mosside Middle School. And Mosul Corporation, 1 Mosul manager subscription for elementary and Mosside Middle School. Grand total of those purchases, $533,990. Please note, the above purchases are contingent upon the district's receipt of the ESSER federal funds. Thus, this purchase may be a 2019-20 purchase or a 2021 purchase, with the revenue expenditures being included in the 2021 fiscal year general fund budget prior to final board approval. The above technology purchases will provide every student with a dedicated device which will reduce sharing, which is a CDC/PD best practice. The remaining $56,713 in ESSER federal funds will be utilized for some additional district purchases, still to be determined, as well as some required non-public school purchases, which are also still to be determined. And finally, item number 21 is accept the following district donation received during the current 1920 fiscal year. That's a donation of a used piano from Mrs. Williams. Dennis Pearson at Gateway Middle School ushered that receipt, and that will be utilized in the music department for the various students.
Okay, he went out with a bang. I'd like to open this section up for discussion and questions from board members.
Yeah, I have a question. I'll wait for Mike to maybe get my mic on. You there? Just real quick on item number 17. I'm just wondering what the reasoning is behind moving away from East Suburban Sports Medicine. How long was our contract with East Suburban until now? What was our average contract? Was that year by year, or did we have a lengthy?
5 years.
They were 5-year deals? And we were getting one trainer out of that, correct?
Correct.
Are they capable of supplying the 3, or? So it at 3.
Additional cost.
Okay. Any idea what the price point difference was, or?
Give me 1 second. I have that here.
It's for the public.
Yeah, tell us what the bid was. I did a question on the hourly.
And just for everyone's note, we did advertise a formal request for proposals for athletic trainer services. We only had 2 entities submit an RFP to the district specifically. That was East Suburban Sports Medicine and Allegheny Health Network. East Suburban submitted for 1 athletic trainer. And just to give you an idea, over the next 5 years, those amounts ranged started at $32,000, $32,000, $33,500, $33,500, and in the final 5th year, $35,000. Allegheny Health Network actually provided two RFPs, one for 2 trainers and one for 3 trainers. The 2 trainer RFP amount for the year one, $29,500, $30,090, $30,169, $31,304, and in the final year, $31,930. The second option, number of trainers, 3 trainers. First year pricing, $39,500, $40,290, $41,095, $41,916, and $42,754.
So with East Suburban, we'd be paying $35,000 for 1 trainer, and for the new firm, it would be $40,000 for 3.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you explain why we want to go from 1 to 3 trainers?
We do have Mr. Hall. We have talked briefly about that this morning, so maybe you want to elaborate a little bit.
I'm Don Hall, the athletic director. Basically, we've been very pleased with the service that we've been provided in the past. However, one additional benefit, a great benefit that we're going to receive from this new setup is we currently had 1 trainer on campus, and we also have a middle school athletic program across Route 22 at Gateway Middle. In this setup, we're going to have not only a trainer who can be in the office and see an injured athlete or a rehabbing athlete, a trainer on site on campus, on the senior high campus for any sports that are going on. But additionally, we can always have a trainer staffing all the middle school events. I think it clearly covers us both literally and figuratively in terms of being responsible about our younger athletes at the middle school, having somebody there again all the time in that 3 trainer setup. Allegheny Health Network has provided outstanding coverage to a number of schools in the region. We've done a lot of research on it, and the proposal was outstanding.
Before you sit down, there was hourly rates on the exhibit in addition to the annual rates. Can you explain when those hourly rates kicked in, or was that just like some kind of a breakdown?
Mr. Shaw may have a more specific answer.
That would actually be in a situation where additional trainers would be required. They would be brought in at an hourly rate.
Okay, so on top of the 3?
Correct.
Then that would kick in?
Correct.
And that would be consistent with both proposals. Anybody in addition to who's in the contract would be paid on that hourly rate.
All right. Did you have a question, Mr. Gallagher?
I have a question on this and then another question. On this, since we are looking at major budget issues, understanding that Allegheny Health Network is offering us 3 trainers instead of 1. However, we could go with their proposal for 2 and save $10,000 this year. Over the course of the 5-year contract, $50,000 of savings to have 2 trainers, which we could always call in a 3rd or a 4th on the hourly rate that as needed, rather than contracting that out from the get-go, where if we went with the Allegheny Health Network now, we'd save in the budget compared to East Suburban $3,000 a year rather than spending $10,000 more. So I'm just wondering why we have to jump to 3 when 1's been okay for at least the past 5 years.
Certainly, I can see the value in that view there and that assessment. I guess part of the issue would be that I think for a while we've been short. I really do believe that we've been fortunate that we haven't had an incident with an athlete in a weight room or somewhere when our trainer was at the baseball field or our trainer was at the track and someone gets hurt at the baseball field. Certainly the trainer can get there, but as I'm sure we all know, seconds count in significant injuries. The other piece of that puzzle is, and I certainly haven't tried to extrapolate the math, but if we were utilizing that third trainer at the middle school consistently in the 2-trainer proposal, I think we would find ourselves eventually spending quite a bit of money to have that third trainer at some site, and over 5 years, you're talking about a significant amount of money. Again, I haven't compared those apples for apples down to the hour or anything like that.
I appreciate that. I was just looking at the reasoning behind that so I can begin to make my own discernment.
Also add that, not that this is something I hope that would last an additional 5 years, but the PIAA was scheduled either today or I believe tomorrow.
It's tomorrow now.
To release information about starting of athletic practices again, with the understanding of the coronavirus and the impact of our student athletes being seen by trainers. We don't know how that's going to look, but I can assure you it's not going to be the same as it was prior to Corona.
I was remiss too. That's a critical element as well. In addition to many other things we're looking at as far as a reopening or reorganization, resocialization of our athletic programs based on what the PIAA says following the governor's word tomorrow, we are looking at a very significant screening procedure for every athlete coming into a building, coming into a weight room, going onto the field, which is really going to tax an individual trainer. So we think that's going to be the new normal, where our athletes are going to have a significant screening procedure before any workout, and we think that's going to require us to have a trainer on site at numerous places for numerous events during the practice or game schedule.
Appreciate that.
Anybody else have questions for Coach Hall?
Oh, not for Coach Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn.
Any other questions on any other items in Section F? Go ahead, Mr. Gallagher.
I would like to see, I noticed that, let me flip down here, that with the funds that we're receiving from the ESSER fund, that there's an additional $56,000 that's not designated to be utilized at this point. Yeah, could I make a suggestion that we ensure that all of our students, when they receive a device, have a hotspot so that they can connect, because the free programs that businesses have put out so that they would have internet access at home is going to be ending. And I think that utilization of that, so that all of our students, we give them a device, but if there's no internet at home, it's not of much use. So just a suggestion.
Very good.
Mr. Brown, Micah, did you hear that?
Can we do
1,
that
2.
with 56K?
Yes, I did hear that. That is something we were talking about, and we are still exploring. We're trying to decide the best way of utilizing the ESSER funds, which are not recurring, and integrate maybe some of the ESSER funds for the purchase of those devices, but then using some of our district funds for the ongoing maintenance. So we're trying to perform that balancing act right now, but that is certainly the plan, to make sure everyone does have internet.
Okay. Good.
Great. Anything else? While you have the floor, Mr. Gallagher, you have anything else? Go ahead, Mrs. Delaney.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was also, sorry. I was also looking at item number 17, and my question really was, since there is so much uncertainty, why do we have to do a 5-year contract agreement?
For our
It's a 5-year agreement.
Yes, 5-year agreement, yes. We've traditionally done those for as long as I've been here in 5-year increments.
But we haven't traditionally been in this kind of situation. That's what I'm wondering, because things are changing so rapidly. If it were even 3 years or something until we had some stability, I don't know.
Yes.
We went out for the proposals for that 5-year contract prior to the shutdown with COVID.
So you're saying if we wanted to do a 3-year, we in essence would have to put it out to bid, because the bid wasn't for 3 years?
Correct.
part of it. We caught part.
If we wanted to change the length of the contract, we'd have to put it out for RFP.
Yeah, we'd have to put it out for RFP again.
I think as the contract, as 5 years goes on, I think our stability comes back.
Oh, yeah, I'm
More,
sure.
you know what I mean? So I'm not worried about the back end of the contract as much as the logistics of this coming year. And actually, and Coach Hall made a good point that I hadn't really thought about, but the need for more medically trained personnel, you know, on staff to be able to do the screenings and everything like you described. I think it shores us up for this year, and as that time goes on, we get to be more stable.
I guess another question is if you started out with 2 trainers and we had a need for 3, could we increase that? The microphone was delayed. If we started out with 2 trainers and after a year we realized we were spending too much on the hourly rate and we needed 3, could we change it midway through the contract?
Contractual situation,
So that's a
be at the
no.
mercy of the vendor.
I'm just going to make a comment.
You have to talk and then it kicks in.
Just going to make a comment. Gateway Middle really never had any coverage with a trainer. So with all their sports, with the baseball, football, their track, they were left just with the coaches. So at least this will give them someone that's there to step up if something happens.
Do you have something, Mr. Gottman?
Yes. Hello?
You have to talk.
With the athletic trainers, I mean, I've been watching the football games, and at first I thought, well, you know, we have one trainer at the lower rate, but then remind me of these games where a player goes down, needs a trainer, and as that trainer's trained to have one player, unfortunately another player goes down. So having more medical staff available, I think would be very beneficial. And when you break it down, 3 trainers at those rates, you split them up, it's a whole lot less than the one that we had before. But I have a question, I'm not sure if it can be answered, is the 3 trainers that we would get, would they be the same 3 trainers we get every single day, or would they be rotated?
They'd be assigned to us.
Okay. Because I think with the original trainer we had, having him there every time built that, that trust.
Without question, he was assigned.
Okay. Thank you.
Sometimes if there's a number of injuries that occur at a sporting event, you have an athletic trainer either from the home school or at the away school. You also have emergency personnel on site. You also have a doctor that's there sometime. You also have some coaches that are already trained in athletic training and have expertise in concussion surveillance, all those types of things. So there's a good number of medical expertise that could be brought to bear. Not, you know, so the kids are safe when they play sports through a number of different arenas. An athletic trainer would concentrate on things like sprained ankles or, you know, bumps or scratches, and they can elevate it to more emergency personnel if necessary, if it goes beyond the scope of their ability to provide care. So the students are almost always safe. I mean, even with dangerous sports, we provide as much safety as we can. Is that about right, Don? Don's getting his mileage in. Strategically placed, so you have to walk.
Just wanted to mention that typically, just to be clear, the only event where we would have the magnitude of coverage would be typically a football game. You know, we have the ambulance there because there's more catastrophic injuries, unfortunately, in that sport. We would also have a trainer from both teams there. Most events, let's say it's a softball game on our softball field or a track meet, we would have just our trainer there. Now, certainly there are some coaches who could assist, and we have the luxury of having very nearby hospital facilities that can be there, you know, in an instant. But clearly, you know, having multiple trainers on our campus that we employ, I think is a phenomenal answer and something that I'm, you know, very excited about, to be quite honest.
No. Keep talking, it'll come on.
But we had a physician that would be present at our football games. Now, would we have a physician that would be accompanying these athletic trainers, since I believe the one that we had is not affiliated with this hospital?
The RFPs, or the request for proposals, included the curriculum vitae and the resumes of the orthopedic doctors that would be assigned by Allegheny Health Network to our school and to our events. Now, I would be remiss, as you mentioned it, we've been blessed, and I'm speaking now a little more as the football coach and the athletic director, with really outstanding coverage from the individuals that did it. They were, did an awful lot of work, and I'm forever grateful to Chris Klecker and to Dr. Fowler. So I want to be clear that it wasn't a matter of, in any way, substandard performance or anything like that. We have a phenomenal deal that really meets a need that I think makes a lot of sense for the district, and definitely is applicable to this era of post-COVID-19, in addition to the coverage that we're going to get for all of our athletes from grade 7. We all are about taking care of the people and taking care of the kids, and the people who take care of the kids. And that's what this proposal does for the Gateway School District.
I would love to add on to that. Chris Klecker has been a phenomenal athletic trainer for many, many years. So thank you, Chris, for all the good, hard, long, extended work. And go buy yourself a pair of long pants to celebrate, He always would come to the games, even freezing cold, in shorts. You could easily spot him. So thanks to Chris.
No? Okay, let's move on then to Section G. We do have a resolution tonight by Board Member Mr. McIntyre.
Has the mic up? There it
There we
goes.
go.
All right. Resolution, shortfall reduction. Whereas the Gateway School Board acknowledges that for the school year 2020-2021, there is a shortfall in revenue due in part to facts and circumstances beyond the control of the Gateway District. And whereas the Gateway School Board has met with its business manager and professionals in an attempt to reduce the shortfall projected for the school year 2021, and whereas the Gateway School District recognizes that there is a fund balance which can be utilized in such circumstances, thanks for that, and whereas the Gateway School District desires to make provisions for some or part of the fund balance to properly balance the 2020-2021 school year budget. Now let it be resolved and enacted on the 30th of June. The Gateway School Board is required to pass a budget by June 30th, 2020 for the school year 2020-2021. Said budget is required by law to be balanced. In the event that the Gateway School District is required to use a portion of its fund balance currently available in order to balance the 2020-2021 budget, said board shall be required to make up for that loss in the fund balance by directing the administration to make cuts in teachers, administration, and other employees in a sum equal to the amount of fund balance taken from the 2021 budget. The administration is directed to make these cuts in the school year commencing 2021-2022. All resolutions or parts of resolutions which are inconsistent herewith and hereby repealed. And then more legal mumbo jumbo. Basically, to break that down, we've had a lot of discussions here about the budget and how it works and the limited number of controls available to the board. Everyone has its pluses and minuses. The one is obvious is raising taxes, something we know we have to do sometimes. We try not to, especially I think right now in a financial crisis. The other one is to reduce spending, which I think this administration has done a phenomenal job in the short period so far, to get this budget down to a more palatable number where we would only be borrowing a potential 1.3 if we didn't do any kind of a tax increase. The danger of that, as we've been talking about for, well, every time we talk about the budget, is every dollar you take out of fund balance to balance this coming year's budget, you are automatically stacking that as a deficit for the following year's budget. So if on June 30th this month, if this board decides to pull $1.3 million from fund balance, the same board will be sitting right here June 30th next year trying to figure out how we're going to come up with that $1.2 million again. So it's essentially, it will balance the budget, but it's kicking the can. It's pushing it off until the next budget. And we're currently, our fund balance is between 8 and 10, correct, Paul? Approximately 8.3 million.
We're projecting.
So it won't take very long if we keep borrowing and that starts compounding to have that fund balance down.
Actually less than that, because some of that's committed.
Correct. So basically what this does is it I think sends home a message to everyone on this board and in the community and to everybody in the district that this is serious money. I'm done seeing it being kicked down the road. In order to be fiscally, responsible, we have to stop the bleeding at some point. I don't anticipate our revenue going up anytime soon. It was not going up while the economy was going up. So the idea of just pushing it off until next year, I don't think we can function very long doing that. What this also does is it gives our administration a much longer time period to come up with those cuts and to be creative. There's certain stipulations of, depending on what time of year it is and where you are in the budget and when the contracts expire, that limits you as far as where you can make cuts among our staff. Which is why this year, when we're looking at cuts, we had to justify any cut we make by lack of enrollment. And when you do that, as a lot of you folks are here because of it, you're looking at classes that don't have many students. So when you start cutting from that, there's not much to cut. A lot of times you're going to end up losing that programming. Where if we can take the entire staff as a whole and make cuts that can be spread out and spread the pain a little bit more effectively and a little more surgically, I think we can do it without losing very much programming. And one thing, and before, I know there's going to be some questions and discussions, hopefully. One thing I would like to actually add to this is, as me and Mr. Shaw have discussed, one of the issues inherently with the way this is worded is, as of right now, we're passing a budget for this year, this coming year. We don't know what we actually had to pull from fund balance from last year because the budget hasn't been actualized yet. We may not see that number till November. So come next year, we won't actually know if we pulled that 1.3 out of fund balance yet. It could have been $500,000. It could have been $3 million. But we have to make our budget next year based off of what we pulled as being that deficit, if that makes any sense to anybody. And obviously, and Reverend Gallagher actually pointed out on the way in tonight that the way this is worded is saying that the administration must make the cuts. Obviously, it goes without saying that they must present those to the board, and then the board will have the ultimate decision.
Questions for Mr. McIntyre from board members?
Yeah, with the fund balance, one thing that keeps popping in my mind is during our budget meetings, Mr. Shaw had a slide up showing the history of Gateway with tax increases and use of fund balance for the budget dating all the way back to, like 2005, something like that, pretty long time. And if you look, there are tons of years where we never had to pull from fund balance. But within the last 3 years or so, we have pulled a combined $8 million. So every time we pull from fund balance, we are burning through that fund that we would need in the event something should happen unforeseen, like a roof hole forming or the furnace shutting down. So having to keep using this fund balance is eating away at that to the point where if we don't have that fund balance, it's going to be harder to make those type of emergency repairs. And if we didn't have to be using the fund balance as much as we had the last few years, the financial situation that we're in, even with the COVID, probably wouldn't be as bad. So, yeah, I agree that we need to watch how we use it, because as he said, we'll just be pushing the can further down the road every year and be in the same situation every single year.
Any other board members wish to comment?
Sure, John, I have a couple of comments about this. It's written right now in such a way that it's unconditional. That is, if we take 1.3 million out of the fund balance, it says here that we shall direct the administration to make cuts in humans, teachers, administrators, and other employees in the sum equal. So what if something goes well and we don't need to make those cuts because money gets restored somehow to the fund balance and we don't need to restore that 1.3 million? This is non-conditional. It says we shall go ahead and make these cuts to these humans, these people, in the same amount as the 1.3 million, when we might not necessarily need to. So if this could be rewritten in such a way that it would be conditional, that is, if we need to do it, here's how we shall do it. Does that make sense?
It does. Section 2. Yeah. No, it's just, there it goes. Bruce wants on too.
You got it. Micah?
You might be on. Go ahead.
Am I on? It's not that hard. I'll start talking. Read section 2. It says, in the event that the Gateway School Board is required to use a portion of the fund balance, and then it goes on to say, you're then directing. But if you're not required, you don't do it.
All right, so let me contend with that. If we do use the fund balance and another means comes by to restore that, we're still directed to cut people.
No,
right?
I think if you find that you have no other alternative, and don't forget, you can always pass another resolution to overrule, to amend this resolution at that time. But I would suggest to you that if you find, let's say you get a windfall, they open up a casino in Monroeville, and now you've got an extra $2 million. You would not have to follow this logic, provided the budget is balanced.
So and that's where I think Mr. Schott, has pointed out his issue with this is whether or not it's, because again, everything you're talking about is once that budget's finalized. We won't know when we go to pass next year's budget if we use that 1.3. We won't know. Just as today, we don't know what we've used from last year.
Yep. That's why I really like the strong language here. We are holding our own feet to the fire.
Correct.
We are committing that it will be paid back.
Now, one amendment I would even discuss, maybe adding to this before we vote on it in a couple of weeks, would be that if circumstances led to where, when in that November, Paul comes, actualizes a budget, says we've only lost $600,000 from fund balance. We can then authorize the district to put that money back in, bring whatever cuts we made, we can bring them back for the second half of the year.
Thank you.
I think that goes without saying. I think.
Which is why I said it.
If you, but Rick wanted some strong language, and he didn't want it to be discretionary on the board next year. He wanted to make it very clear that if this can't happen, we make some cuts that balance the budget.
Everyone can hear me now. Hello?
Keep talking, it'll come on.
As far as the Jeez. Sorry about that. Yeah, as far as when I saw this resolution, my initial concern was, and as Mr. McIntyre stated, that right now, when we look at 1920, we still don't know ultimately where we end 1920 and what our actual utilization of fund balance will be. And kind of a little bit of dovetail on what Mr. Gottman had said, you utilized fund balance. When we developed the current 1920 budget,
we had known that when we put this budget together and was approved, we had projected to utilize $2,177,000 of fund balance. So the way I look at it with the various unknowns, and I've stated this before at previous meetings, there is no windfall for the district as a result of this shutdown and the situation we've been under in the last 2.5 months for that. There are some expenditure savings, but again, there's still some loss of revenue that's still unknown. We all know that the extension for earned income tax mercantile has been extended July 15th. So that, again, that even extends, just one example of extending out exactly how much revenue are we going to receive. Are we going to see, once we get to that point and those final returns are submitted to Keystone Collections, where are we with those? But at the end of the day, we're looking at 1920. I look at it as a win. If somehow, some way, we use less than the $2,177,000, that's a win in my book for that. But granted, as I always say, the pendulum swings both ways. If some of those earned income tax and mercantile do not come in as anticipated, it could be $2.5 million. It could be $3 million coming out of the fund balance that we weren't anticipating for that. So again, fast forward to a year from now, we're in the same situation. They asked me, Mr. Schott, how much are we going to use for 2021? We're not going to know that until probably realistically September. The exact dollar amount, possibly not until sometime in October, depending on some final accounts payable coming in for that. But again, we'll be back here in a year from now trying to build the same budget. And again, that won't even be apples to apples. We have other circumstances and things that we're going to be looking at as well. They're going to change the dynamic that we won't even have today to a year from now for that. So again, the exact impact of exactly how much fund balance will not be known. Now, again, even just as far as currently 1920, when we do have that amount, that will give us our starting point officially as of July 1st for that. But again, that's one of those, stay tuned. We still have a lot of reconciling to do until we get to that particular point in time. So again, we've estimated where we've ended 1920, and again, utilize that estimate in terms of trying to evaluate what's the best option to officially balance the budget for 2021.
Taking from the fund balance. Have we replenished it in any way?
No. The only way to, in terms of specifically attempt to replace fund balance in a consistent manner, is to create what's referred to as a coexistent funding stream, whereby a certain amount of, say, real estate tax millage would be devoted directly to either increasing fund balance or utilizing it for capital projects for that. We don't have a mechanism like that in the budget. Or say, for instance, maybe even 0.2 of a mil would go towards building up a surplus for that. Unfortunately, we haven't had the luxury of being able to be in that particular situation. We have been drawing down fund balance. As of several years ago, it was at approximately 14.8, 14.9 million. Which I had even said at the time, I've said several times over years, I didn't feel that was an appropriate level of fund balance, even though Moody's would disagree with me and would say, we want you to have even more than that. So it's made sense to utilize fund balance, again, to pay for capital repair projects, projects that are non-reoccurring or maybe aren't necessary for another 10, 15, maybe 30 years, like the stadium wall, for instance, as a good example of that. Where, and the situation we're looking at right now is that you just don't want to get into a situation when you're utilizing fund balance for reoccurring expenditures each and every year, salaries, benefits, that, again, next year, coming right out of the gate, you're going to have the same expenditure before you even touch anything in terms of revenues or expenditures, which is what Mr. McIntyre was saying, the $1.3 million. So again, in theory, for 21-22, that there's a potential deficit of $1.3 million. And again, that's assuming there's no other increases in revenues or decreases in revenues, and again, some of the other expenditures as well for that. So,
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
a concern or thought I had about the language of this. Now, I understand that I'm going to share something and hopefully have it be received as a friendly amendment. Understanding that what I'm about to say is probably redundant. However, the redundancy can stop potential failures and, in this case, misunderstandings from occurring. So, at the risk of that, on Section 3, I'd like to amend it to read, and if this is acceptable, Bonnie, I'll just give you my copy. The administration is directed to report to the Gateway School Board of Directors any and all information regarding cuts in the school year commencing the 2021-2022 by March/April 2021. And the reason for that is just to make sure that it comes back to us. What's that?
We go to reading, the administration is directed to present these proposed cuts to the board by March 2021.
Right, yeah, any information regarding those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that would be.
All right, I think
acceptable.
that's pretty easy. Bruce, he's already taken this. Thanks, Scott.
Anyone else want to comment? Mr. Ritter, Mr. Clary? You look like you're deep in thought. Do you have anything to add? Paul?
Paul, you hate to agree with me?
No. Well, I think it's a little bit redundant, like the board already gets those reports from administration, but what Mr. McIntyre is trying to do is hold us accountable. The downside is that he's holding us accountable for a number that we won't really know if it's actual. So the board would have to decide if they want to hold our feet to the fire and make sure if we're borrowing from fund balance that we're taking that out of the budget. But you're going to do that not knowing if that number's actual.
No matter what, we have to account for that in the budget this time next year.
Right.
Whether it's actual or theoretical.
Right.
To balance that budget, that's what we have to do. So to me, whether it's been actualized or not is irrelevant, because we have to account for it in the budget.
And to be specific,
Mr. McIntyre.
we're going to target the humans. We're not going to target some other program or books or buildings or anything else. We're going to specifically cut back a number of humans. Right here, teachers, administrations, and other employees in a sum equal to. So we're not going to give ourselves the leeway to make other cuts. First, we're committing to targeting humans.
I think if those cuts were available, they would be on this budget.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Is that simple? I mean, it
Yeah.
really is that simple.
No, in some ways, you're tying the board's hands with what we make cuts, and you're forcing us to make basically staffing and programming cuts based on what we borrow.
That's essentially all there is to cut.
I know, there's not much to cut. Well, we could cut, I'm not advocating, I'm just saying hypothetically, there are things you could cut from a school district, I won't say, that aren't staffing, they're programming, that nobody wants to cut here, so.
Mr. McIntyre.
Go ahead, Susan.
It takes a minute for Micah to get your mic going.
I don't want to sound redundant, but I'm understanding what John is saying, because that was my concern too, was that the first thing that I'm seeing is cuts to teacher administration, and I'm always looking at the integrity of our program and our teachers and all who contribute to Gateway to make it the quality that it is. So I'm always wondering where other cuts can be found. As I said, I know as a fiscally responsible taxpayer, and as well as the rest of us here, and even on fixed income, but I'm always concerned when we start cutting, and are there other out-of-the-box ways we can do it,
Yeah, and you make a good point, and you've heard me describe it again. This board has 3 levers at their control. You can raise taxes, you can borrow from fund balance, and you can lower expenses. Okay? As irresponsible it is to just borrow from fund balance every year, it's equal as irresponsible to just say, we're going to raise taxes every year, and we're not going to be fiscally responsible, we're not going to make the hard decisions. Again, we're just kicking it down the road. And then when we're looking at something like possibly still looking at that bond issue, we no longer have that tax raise available to pay for that bond and to replace those two buildings, while we are simultaneously depleting our fund balance and rolling the dice on those old buildings not having the problems that we anticipate them having, which led to us wanting the bond in the first place. Do you follow? But to touch on what you said, I think we can make a reasonable amendment to this to not make it specific to staffing.
Any and all cuts, including cuts to teachers.
There you go.
Administration.
Personally, though, if we can come up with $1.2 million next year in cuts from a transferred budget,
You don't use this.
everybody on the stage is going to be fired that we didn't do it this year. You follow me? If those
That's
cuts
a
were there,
fact.
they'd already be made.
That's a
I would
fact.
certainly hope. I'm done ranting.
Anybody else? For the record, I don't like this setup.
It's rough.
Wait till we get back to our boardroom. Are there any other questions for Mr. McIntyre before I close this for discussion? Okay, let's move on. Comments from residents on non-agenda items. Evergreen, are you ready? He's walking in the door right now. How is that for timing?
Unbelievable.
How is that for timing? Step right up, Mr. Mateo. We need some music, Micah. Cue music.
I keep hearing the word human come up, and I'm on that human side. And first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for all the support that you've given us, and particularly when we're going through what we've just went through with COVID and we're on the other side of it. And I'm reflecting on what we've done to keep our humans engaged. And I'm not one to brag, but all of you know that when you come into Evergreen, it's a kind place. Everyone's warm. It's a warm place. Everybody's welcome. And we have a wonderful team, and some of us are here tonight, that we wanted to just talk about the work that we've done. And our equity team that's here, some members of our equity team, we really looked at, you know, the students, what they're seeing right now in our world. And we really wanted to become and give them the reinforcement that we are the kind place to be. So we came up with a statement. Now, we've had lots of meetings throughout the year, and our last meeting last week, we felt this void because we can't see the kids. We're not there for the kids. And what the kids are seeing in the world right now can be very scary. So we wanted to just, as a building and as the caring place that Evergreen is, we came up with just a statement that I want to just refer to and just give you a little give a backdrop of what we want to be for our kids. So the last weekend of school, we observed deep and lasting imprints of inequity throughout our country. Even though we've seen progress through society in many generations, recent incidents still provide evidence that there are inequalities that are in our country. Being in school would provide that opportunity for the staff to lead discussions about the events that are happening in our world and reinforce the school philosophy of showing respect for yourself, respect for others, and respect for our environment. We strongly believe that when we see this, we must be allies. We must be allies for our students. The only response for us is to create a community of care in our physical and virtual classrooms. And I can tell you, I never believed I would be a YouTube star through all of this. In our virtual a virtual world, we were able to provide that. But through our work with our team, we have to build that capacity, and we have to continue to lead the efforts towards justice and equity. And all staff in our building provide an inclusive, caring place for students to learn and grow. Our students are going to need to discuss the events with peers and adults. And even though we can't be together at Evergreen, we encourage everybody to support one another, to make time and space for conversations and reflections. And always, we're here for the Evergreen family, for those students. So thank you for your time. And I'd like to thank Dr. Chakey for his work, for helping us be able to do our work through the equity team at Evergreen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mateo. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak? Mr. Lepsovich, step right up, sir.
Good evening, Board. Pleasure to see you again. I wasn't going to speak until I found out that we were going to have 3 trainers for the price of 1, which I think is a great idea, because I was in West Virginia over the weekend, and I had the news on, and on their high school programs, if it's baseball, football, soccer, if everybody's on a field or different areas at one time, they need their players to have their temperatures checked at all times. So if you have 1 trainer, you would have to hire other trainers hourly rate. I think that would put you in a hole if you didn't get those other 3 trainers in for the price they're charging us today, because it's going to be a changed environment, and the kids are going to be protected with the temperature change, a test, and a few other things that we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
My name's Jennifer Hayes. I live on Regal Court. I do have a question about Section G, but I wasn't sure if now or 5 seconds ago was appropriate.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I feel silly asking questions about, like, that I totally don't understand, how we don't know how much money is going to be left in the fund balance until later. Like, I don't get that only because I only know my budget for my house, so I don't understand how it works for a school district. How do we not know, like, if we're still paying the bills every month, like, how do we not know how much is left? I totally, talk to me like I
We'll ask Dr. Shaw
totally
to
don't
give that
get
to
it.
us in the most basic way that you can without your accounting.
Yeah, I just
lingo.
don't, I only know the Hayes budget.
Let's just say that in a normal non-COVID-19 year, unlike what we're currently in terms of where we end the years and historically, there is fluctuation in the revenues and in expenditures on both sides of things for that. So, you know, when we put this budget together like we're putting together now, it's based on our best estimates historically and other circumstances. But as far as exactly what exact dollar amount comes in, based on when those revenues are collected, we actually receive, whether it's a check or electronic transfer. Yeah. Sometimes we may not know till July, August, September to actually get those receipts in. And if there's a shortfall in some of those numbers, we're not going to know right away with that, as well as if there's additional collections in some of those items, we're not going to know as well with that. And on the flip side of the expenditures, again, we know there's certain ones we set with that. If there's fluctuation, if there's, say, certain items that might require overtime above and beyond what we had already built in, some of that may not come through, you know, towards the end and maybe until July in terms of an accounts payable for that. Some of our, a big area we run into is some of our outside placements. You know, depending on, you know, maybe you anticipate 3 students going somewhere, maybe you have 2 or 3 more new ones come in, and until we get some of those final invoices as well, that could also kind of blow up your budget a little bit for that. So it is kind of a frustrating thing. It'd be nice ideally to say today, within maybe $100, here's where it's going to be. But unfortunately, it's just impossible to be able to do that.
Yeah.
We know is being handled through different law firms, and eventually we may lose that appeal.
Yeah.
And then we have to, in turn, distribute a check back to that company or business.
Got it. I get it. That was really helpful.
I would use the word.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, so,
Jen, let me
I'm sorry,
ask-
yeah.
I would use the word reconciliation, correct? And a reconciliation doesn't really happen until a couple months after your budget
Right.
closes. So we're like October, November, we're truly reconciled.
Yeah.
But the problem is we have to pass our budget legally by
Right.
June 30th.
Yeah, that timing is tricky. Yeah. So are you guys allowed to use any of the CARES Act money? Like, does it have to be on iPads?
You cannot use it to balance your budget. You have to use it on new purchases.
Okay. I mean, I think the way you guys have it allocated
Yeah.
looks fantastic. I just wondered if that was an option.
No, honestly, we would have liked to be able to use some of the CARES Act money to balance our budget, but it's not written legally that way. Paul gave a good discussion on that versus supplant versus supplement.
Yeah. Well, and Mrs. Cerucci, I liked how you said that Section 2 kind of ties you guys to forcing it to be cuts in teachers' administration, and I agree with you that if you guys could amend it in some way that if there was some cut, like uniforms for something that's in the budget, that could be cut. I mean, there's got to be something somewhere, maybe, that would come up that would be an option, that at least if you guys left that open as an option instead of just administration. It stresses me out as a parent to think of, well, especially teachers and administration cuts. Like,
Well,
I think our administration's excellent and we need everybody. I can't imagine less.
And
That stresses
an
me out.
unintended consequence of your bill is that it probably stresses out all of our employees, because you basically said whatever we borrow, we're eliminating somebody. So that,
Somebody or something. And I think Bruce already made the notes. We're going to make that amendment to not restrict it just to staffing. I'm fine with that language change. I don't see any change in the reality of it, to be honest with you. Another addition I might talk with Bruce about is the idea that if we say we're taking 1.3, and forgive me if I repeated this, I've talked about this a lot in the last couple of days. If we say we're taking out 1.3 and we somehow come up with 1.3 in cuts for next year's budget, and then Paul does his math and we only borrowed half of that amount from fund balance, that we find that out in October, November, that would free us up and the administration up to bring back whatever that amount is. If it's $500,000, whatever we can bring back staff-wise or whatever we cut for the second half of that year, that we'd have the ability to do that. I don't want to make cuts for the sake of rebuilding our fund balance. That's not what this is about. It's about protecting future boards and future administrations and keeping us from going down a rabbit hole that we've seen in many districts around us go down.
Are there grants out there that we can write, and residents that would pitch in to write a grant that would cover anything? Is there money out there? I only know as a teacher, donors choose. At my level, I don't know if that would ever apply to a district budget level, or if there are grants that somebody could write to help.
well, we're talking a $75 million budget. Our last grant that we got for our school police was $20,000. So I can't speak to grants as much as our administration can. I think you're talking about a drop in the bucket. We're not going to get a grant for multi-millions of dollars. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And a lot of times, too, like you were talking about, you can't use some of these grants to
supplemental.
to balance the budget.
Yeah.
They have to be on new items. And one of the things about school police, we were kind of ahead of the game as far as safety and security, so we had some of that stuff in place. So we can't get some of that grant money to pay for it because it's already there.
Yeah, I was just thinking, if there's a $50,000 thing on there, something that's sports related, that could be a grant for that and save that $50,000 for humans. What?
I thought you were going to say if it's sports related, just okay.
Well, hey, my
Right in
kids
front,
play
it's on.
sports. I'm just saying, but I'm very frugal
we've-
about, I don't think we need fancy new shiny things.
We've weighed, the option of hiring a professional grant writer and hoping that maybe that person would pay for themselves. But again, when you're facing a $3.5 million budget, a
Right.
new hire ends up getting chopped. So
Right.
you're bringing up things that other people have mentioned, and they're probably really good ideas.
Yeah.
Any teachers who want to volunteer to write grants, we're open to that.
Well, thank you. I wanted to say thank you in closing for opening this up for a Zoom for people who can't be here so that they could ask questions or at least be here live. Moving forward, I hope that that's something that we continue to do so that people can ask questions, and especially in terms of equity. It's like the most equitable thing to let people to be able to ask questions, whether it's through Micah or somehow, however you guys did it last time. And Dr. Chakey, I just wanted to thank you for your equity statement. I appreciate it as a mom, as a teacher, as a resident, all of that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to reports. You want to go first? Do you have anything else?
Just one item that I would like to just bear with me. My voice is going here, but I have heard from the Department of Education, Governor Wolf's office, concerning the possible reopening of schools. There is a pandemic plan, health and safety plan, that must be board approved. It was released to superintendents around the Commonwealth on Thursday. We have had the opportunity to review that administratively. It is very detailed. There's a lot of information that needs to be addressed. We are forming a committee to do so, and we should begin work on that immediately. There's a lot of information pertaining to the status of the color-coded system of red, yellow, and green. So hopefully we're able to have that in place for the board to review by June 30th and also present to the public how that would look. So we are very much hard at work. A lot of things up in the air. It's very fluid at this time. So I just ask for everyone to be patient. The document was just released on Thursday. So thank you.
Okay. Dr. Chakey, do you have anything?
Nothing further.
Dr. Rossi?
Just want to thank Evergreen's team for coming this evening and for all their work throughout the school year. Thank you.
Okay.
Hall tell us about the purchase of equipment and how it's sort of overlaid and staged from time to time. We had a question about that. Don, do you remember the question we had? It was regarding helmets and other things that they have a lifespan to them, and then you always have to purchase enough so that you can retire the oldest ones and bring the new ones in. So because of the budget crunch we were having right now, we were wondering if we could delay the purchase of some of those newer pieces of equipment for maybe a more opportune time. Do you remember that?
Sure. Without question, desperate times require desperate measures, and without question, we can do whatever we want to do as far as delaying the cycle that we're on. The one that we don't control is helmets. We wouldn't be in a crisis mode, but they have to be, by law, recertified every year, and they also have a time limit. So what we've done, which I think was done clearly before I was here by my predecessors, is set up a system where we would buy like 10% of the helmets every year, so that in no one budget year would you be stuck with trying to buy all the helmets that time out. The only issue with helmets is if we don't buy any in this year, we lost 11 to reconditioning. They recertify them. They either don't pass because they don't pass. I'm sorry, we lost 13. 3 didn't pass because of the fact that they didn't pass the testing. The other 10 were 10 years old. So even if we didn't play football in the fall and wear those helmets next year, those 10 helmets or 11 helmets that we might lose that we bought 10 years from next year, 9 years ago now, we would lose them anyway from the inventory. So the system is set up so that we can continue to match roughly what we lose and not have to buy a whole bunch of helmets in any one year, because they are a very expensive item because of the vital role they play in the sport. That being said, Riddell gives us a report of what year's helmets are, and we certainly could look at postponing until a year where we feel a little better. When we're talking about a huge budget like $75 million, we're not talking about a ton of money, but certainly we're talking about money that could be pushed, to use Mr. McIntyre's term, kick down the road a year at least, and buy 20 helmets if we have to make up that inventory. The one problem that you do have also, and I didn't mean to make this a long thing about just helmets, but it's the primary one. Okay, well you got, let's say we have 70 players on the team. What we don't know every year is what size helmets everyone's gonna wear. So you can't just have 70 helmets and say, that's our helmets, here's our guys, match them up. It's clearly a very specific fitted item. So we buy, we have 80, we have 90 in inventory, let's say. And typically if we have 75 or 73 players, those 90 helmets will work. And there's still some years where you have to buy some additional helmets, after the fact, because you maybe didn't have enough size large. It can happen that way. But that being said, that's how that works. Shoulder pads, they're not certified. We lose some to just being, they take them back, they clean them, they sanitize them, and some are beyond repair, and we lose them. But those are an item that would be easily said, we don't need to replace them because of time. We have a system set up again where we buy 8 to 10 every year, so that we're not in any, after 5 years, we have 40 pair of shoulder pads that are within 5 years old that our players are in. One thing that I pledge as the football coach, and certainly on a more overarching thing as the athletic director, is our number one priority is going to be the safety of our kids. And helmets and shoulder pads in our sport is really the nuts and bolts of that piece of the equation. Other things we do with travel, there's a bunch of different ways you can travel. We travel on 2 school buses, and we take an equipment truck that is owned by the district. If you have each student athlete carry their own gear loose, you lose all those seats. We're also looking at COVID-19 potential restrictions where you can only put 20 on a bus. So if you can't put 20 kids, you can put 20 kids in their equipment on the bus, but now you'd be into, you can do the math, many buses. If you go to coach buses, much more expensive, they have storage underneath. Though that I'm addressing, if I haven't said it clear enough, the equipment bag thing. But we could push those another year as well in the same mode. So again, the helmet thing would be the one that you really can't control because you're going to lose them due to the time element, even if you didn't use them or they weren't used next season, if we didn't play football. Shoulder pads we could push, but they're all set up. The last piece is uniform rotations. And I know a previous speaker mentioned we don't need to buy uniforms. We've set up a system so we look at the normal lifespan of a uniform. Fortunately, in 2020, with so many turf fields, those years are longer. It used to be if you were constantly laundering grass stains out and repairing them the way you do, you might maybe get 3-4 years out of a uniform set. Now, I think you can comfortably say it's 5 to 6 at a minimum. That being the case, we've set up a rotation where each sport gets a new set of uniforms about every 5 or 6 years. In this crunch, when we're talking about really difficult choices in the budget, very difficult things to deal with as far as cutting across the board, it certainly only makes sense that we could postpone getting a new set of uniforms, especially when we didn't wear uniforms for games in the spring, let's say in lacrosse or in track, because we didn't have those seasons. This year happened to be track warm-ups. Our cheer team is due for a set of uniforms, and it would have been lacrosse uniforms. And again, I don't think anybody in our district, given the depth and the gravity of trying to make cuts, would argue with saying, yeah, we can postpone a year of those uniforms. But it isn't like willy-nilly where we just say randomly, yeah, let's buy some new uniforms. It's definitely on a cycle where we spread them out. We have 20-some sports, and we say every 5 or 6 years in a reasonable time period, we'll replace the uniforms in that cycle. Sure.
Lost my train of thought. reports. Where were we? Board reports. I have to give each board member an opportunity. Mr. Gottman.
Just real quick, one, I'd like to thank our administration, Mr. Brown, for the wonderful graduation ceremony that took place. I mean, it was absolutely amazing ceremony, and yeah, I'm proud to see that our kids were able to have their graduation after everything that's happened. And I'm also, let's say, I am happy that we have come up with the potential way to save our languages through our creative scheduling. I mean, one thing I'm very passionate with the school is the foreign language department. As I said before, I've taken all 5 years here for German, and to be able to see that continue is great to know, and I know our students are happy to see it continue, and I'm looking forward to see what our language departments come up with for the years to come.
Thank you. Mrs. Warning.
Just a couple things. I just want to say congratulations to our graduates. It was a wonderful ceremony. A lot of work was put into that to get to what they had. And thanks to Mr. Brown, to our administrators, and everyone that worked together to make it such a success. To our teachers, our administrators, thank you for getting through another school year. It's not the way we wanted to see it end. You also learned an awful lot with the way that you taught our kids. And thank you, I really appreciate that. It was a little hard for the kids to catch on, but you guys were so instrumental just being in touch with the families that it worked out very well. And thank you very much on that. Coach Hall, I just want to say too that we have an athlete, Olivia Livingston, that was named Athlete of the Year, was it through the Post-Gazette, I believe? And congratulations on her, and wish her the best as she continues in her college years. Also, grab-and-go lunches will continue through the summer. We're doing them Monday through Thursdays, 11 o'clock to 1 at all the sites that are open. So Thursdays, they will double up to make sure that students, children, whoever picks up the lunches will have enough for the weekends. Also, if anybody can answer, is the high school track open yet? Thank you, Mr. Brown. It is open, so if you want to go out walking, got a brand new track. And that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre.
I'll wait for a second. Micah? All right. I think you've all heard me ramble enough tonight, but just real quick to Mr. Telly, I don't know if he's watching or not, but a personal thank you. He kind of went above and beyond for my own family in the past couple months. One of the something that maybe a lot of you didn't think about, you know, as a result of this COVID and the school shutdown, was kids left in kind of like a normal day. So all their lockers were left kind of as is through the whole shutdown, and our staff had to go through and basically dump out collect everything out of the lockers. And I think my daughters took at least 2 44-gallon garbage bags. And so I just want to thank Mr. Telly for dealing with that and not being too mad at me for it. Thank you.
Mr. Ritter.
Just a quick reminder, PSBA is ready to accept any recommendations to updates for its upcoming legislative platform for the next year. So if our school board would like to add anything in that, now is our time before June 30th for us to vote to offer a formal recommendation to the PSBA. So let's, I can give you the logistics for that as well, that document that currently exists and any proposed updates that we might want to add. And I'd just like to tell you a quick story about Mr. Telly. My daughter, 10 years ago, she was learning to drive. We don't live far from middle school, so we go up there with my car. I was teaching her to back in. So there's this one car in front of the driveway area there, and I said, okay, Christy, you want to back in front of it in an S fashion, so you get 6 inches away. So she starts backing in, that's not quite right. She pulls out, backs in again, that's not quite right. Mr. Telly comes out the front door, and he's looking at who's backing in towards his car. It was his car. Poor guy. We were practicing parking next to his car, and he didn't say a word. Didn't say a word. What a nice generous guy to recognize that, Christy was trying to learn to park using his car as a target. So thank you, Mr. Telly, for all the years of, that you've done for all the students. We won't know all that, but thank you, at least for that one sweet thing that you did for Christy.
Thank you, Mr. Ritter. Mr. Caleri?
Am I good?
Yep.
Okay, anybody who lives in the area of Bucknell, be careful, there's a bear running around. My public service announcement for the evening. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Mrs. Delaney?
Yes, I have a few things that I just wanted to mention. First, I just wanted to thank all of the former students or current students and defending the language program, and then all the emails we got from parents and students and teachers defending the family consumer science program as well. And we know, and I know, as far as the integrity of always trying to maintain that excellence that has been a tradition for Gateway. So that's why it's so important when you come out, when you have others come out and defend programs such as that. And also, I wanted to thank Dr. Short and Brian Gottman for really working to putting together plans and options, and that's what we had always talked about, is having options so that we don't just indiscriminately eliminate programs and staffing, and that's something I'm very passionate about too. And also Dr. Chakey for just adding all the information and keeping us updated as far as diversity, because right now it's very important that our district really works with as many different options there to make it it's already diverse, but even more equitable, let me use that term. And I thank Mr. Mateo, who I was supposed to be working with on a couple of projects, and unfortunately COVID-19 stopped us dead in our tracks, but I'm holding you to him still. And his staff, he's right, Evergreen it's like a warm and fuzzy school to go into, and I really enjoy when I do come there for things. And also, Pastor Gallagher and myself, and even Dr. Short, we had an opportunity to be out in Monroeville today for the Black Lives Matters protests, which from what Pastor Gallagher was telling me, it was organized by a student. And I saw many of our current students and former students there, and I was really proud of them for getting involved in that particular movement. And also, there is an article, I'm not going to go into it because it would take up too much time, but it does actually, it's by Liz Schumer, and it's in the House and Garden magazine, and it breaks down the discussion of what Black Lives Matter means and why it's problematic to say all lives matter. And I think it's worth the read because it would give you a little bit better understanding of why they're protesting specifically, and I don't think a lot of us know. And then also another book that they're going to be using in the July discussion with the Monroeville Interfaith Ministry, and that is called White Fragility, and that I ordered and just started. I had gotten it on Amazon, and I think that is definitely worth the read. It may be a little uncomfortable for some people to read it, but I think these are the kind of things where you have to start having the conversation, and you have to, even if you start feeling uncomfortable, I don't think anybody wants you to be uncomfortable. I certainly don't, so I'm open when people want to talk to me and have a conversation that they have not typically had in the past. That's all I got.
Thank you. Reverend Gallagher.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. It was a 16-year-old young lady that put together that march today. It was incredible. That's an awesome undertaking for anybody to do, let alone a 16-year-old. I also wanted to thank everybody that sent out the emails, especially for our students and our young folks that sent those out. To keep your voices up in all matters that are going on within the community, within any type of structure, any policy making, because your voices are crucial and important. And I hope you can see that input helps guide us to make decisions. I also wanted to point out at the beginning of each one of our meetings, we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And many of us have been saying this since we were maybe in preschool, kindergarten, when we began to learn it. As a Navy veteran, the pledge, the national anthem have a special resonance in my mind. However, I think that we tend to just say the words because we know them so well. We know them on a specific meter as we recite it. And just to backtrack a little bit, we pledge allegiance to a flag, and not the material that hangs from a stand, but we specifically say the republic for which it stands. As elected officials in this community, we have a responsibility to honor that republic by honoring your decision to place us in these seats so that we can make decisions proper for the entire community. As we look at that flag, just a little lesson that you get when you're probably in elementary school, so the teachers in the room will probably go, yeah, we know that already, but with the stripes for the 13 colonies, and the flaws that we had in our system as colonies, the 50 stars representing our states, and the difficulties it was to becoming the nation that we are. The red for valor, sometimes it's looked at as the blood that was shared for the freedoms that we have, the white for purity, and the blue for justice. So as we say that Pledge of Allegiance, we actually hold ourselves pledged to liberty, freedom for everybody, and justice for everybody. And we say justice twice by looking at the flag, making a pledge to the colors of that flag, and with our words. And as we look at our nation right now, in the division, this is supposed to be one country, not two different countries based on the skin color, nation of origin, our native language, whatever it may be. We're supposed to be one in the midst of all of this. Now, our students, bring this back around to being on the school board. Our students need to see us as leaders living out that justice and liberty for everybody, because our students are going through the same things that we're seeing on television. As we were marching down the street today, Susan and I were walking beside each other, and there was a 5-year-old little girl marching for her justice and her liberty. That's one of our students. That's one of the future leaders of our community. So I urge us, as we sit in our roles in our community, that we find a way that we don't just make decisions on balancing a budget, that we don't just make decisions on where cuts should be made and which programs that we restore, but we actually live out an example of working together for that unity. I don't have anything else, Mary Beth.
Thank you, Reverend Gallagher. Before I close really briefly, I would just say that there's a reason why I'm wearing red, white, and blue tonight, if anybody didn't notice, is because I wanted to celebrate the fact that we're all Americans, and we need to focus on that unity, Reverend, as you mentioned. And there's not much anybody can really say at a time like this to fix what's going on. And the only thing I'll close with is what I do personally, and this is not what I'm telling you to do personally, but when I face trials and troubles in my own life, I turn to the Word of God. And I'm going to close with 2 Corinthians 13:11. Aim for restoration, comfort one another, agree with one another, live in peace, and the God of love and peace be with you. Can I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.